Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with today's guest, but we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners, the Global Community of Women in High School Sports and We Coach. These are two great organizations. They really are, and you should be a part of them. That's We Coach and the Global Community of Women in High School Sports. Now, let's have a quick word from our sponsors. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack for their support of the podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. Athletic surveys also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program, and it gives them a voice to say how important a positive athletic experience is for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. We also want to say thanks to Final Forms, the industry leader in registration, but Final Forms is more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile apps. They also have reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication. And for athletic directors, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you talk to a team that's walked in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake and get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just love the smart cameras, the mobile apps. They also love the analytics, but there's so much more. Huddle has the tools to help your teams and your athletes improve. And if you go to huddle.com, you're going to find a complete professional grade solution to the challenges that you and your coaches are facing. Go to huddle.com and you'll see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channel. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com and use our podcast code ADPOD10 and get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Create custom branded content for your school's social media channel. We also want to thank the good folks at Snap Mobile. Go to onsnap.com, that's onsnap.com, and check out their entire suite of platforms designed to help you as an athletic director do your job easier and better. SnapRaise is their fundraising platform. Our coaches have used SnapRaise with great success, and you can too. There's even an option to get your money before you actually do your fundraiser. SnapSpend is their secure money management platform. Snap Store allows you to order custom spirit gear and team gear. Snap Connect is their multilingual family engagement platform. And Snap Manage will work with you to design an entire website for your athletic department. You can find it all at onsnap.com. That's onsnap.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They will show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you'll have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands-on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They will also show you how to set up and sell tickets for things like school dances, your school plays and concerts, even graduation. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out their indoor scoring tables and video boards. They not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. We've got a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. Email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com, and you can see exactly what their products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com. And we want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards for all your sports, or a neat way to have your Hall of Fame displayed, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. Their interactive touchscreen consoles and templates will help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. Welcome back, everyone, to a very special episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We've got an old friend on, Dr. Scott Grant. Scott was on the podcast a while back. You know, his toolbox tips are in the books. If you don't know Scott Grant, you should. Scott is an assistant professor at Findlay University in Ohio. He's also a certified athletic administrator and a very successful consultant. His consulting group, Triple Threat Leadership, is very well known. We're going to give him a chance to talk about all of those as we get going. He's also, I'd say, one of the top go-to gurus regarding NIL. It certainly appeared quickly on our plates as athletic directors and grown, and it's ever changing almost on a daily basis. And that's primarily what Scott's going to talk to us today. But Dr. Scott Grant, welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to come back on. I'm always excited to spend some time with you and your listeners.
Well, again, for our listeners, you need to check out and get connected with Scott Grant. He's on LinkedIn. He's a very in-demand speaker. As I mentioned, he's going to be presenting at the NADC Conference coming up in December, and he's going to talk about that too. But Scott, for our listeners, if they've been living in a cave and they haven't been paying attention to the podcast, give them a little bit of your background, where you grew up, all that. Maybe take us up to when you got started with Triple Threat. How's that?
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. So originally grew up in a small town in Ohio. My parents were both teachers. My dad was a high school basketball coach. So I knew my life was going to be education, athletics, all rolled into one. I graduated from college. I taught then for 5 years. So I was a high school history teacher. I was a varsity head golf coach, assistant basketball coach, and assistant athletic director for 5 years. I worked underneath Jerry Snodgrass. So some people know who that is. He was the former commissioner of the OHSA. He's like a second father to me. So I feel like I learned from the best straight out of the gate. I then spent 3 years as a high school athletic director. Loved it. Had an opportunity to start doing some research around pay to participate policies. Those were really big at that time. So honestly, I got asked to do a pay to participate policy. I didn't know how to do it. And when I was asking other ADs, they didn't know why they had them or what they were. So I was like, all right, I got to go figure this out. So I went back and I did my doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies and wrote every assignment on pay to participate policies in interscholastic athletics. So I seem to find myself in these weird pockets of interest, but I then went and I taught in the college level for 6 years in business. And during that time, I started Triple Threat Leadership. And what that really does is it goes into schools and it helps prepare students for positive social media usage, leadership development training. My heart's always been in K-12. So after those 6 years and Triple Threat was moving and growing and increasing, I actually spent 2 years at the University of North Carolina working in athletics, in leadership development and operations and outreach, and right when NIL was becoming really big and moving forward. And I saw this massive need in the high school space to really understand it, but more so for athletic directors. I always felt like athletic directors don't get as much support as they should. And in this space, I don't trust a lot of people who weren't high school ADs to educate well, whether that's right or wrong. So my family and I moved back to Ohio. I teach in the College of Education, and honestly, I've kind of devoted my time to helping ADs figure out NIL and prepare in the way that best fits their state, their school, their district, and support them in that process. So that's kind of led me to where I'm at currently at this stage, and Triple Threat has grown. We have NIL-education.com, and we do a lot of different things to support the schools and the ADs and move them forward.
Yeah, we're going to dive into NIL. We're going to dive into Triple Threat a little bit more. Share some just kind of a teaser about NIL. I think from my perspective, as I was getting ready to retire a couple of years ago, it was just appearing at the college level, and I think the typical high school response, at least in Florida, was, "Oh, that's never going to happen at the high
Right.
school level. It's never going to be in Florida." How has it changed? Just some broad brushstrokes in that, say, 2-3 year periods since it first surfaced.
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, at the college level, I think there were a lot of people that were viewing the same thing, right? Like, oh, this isn't going to pass. They're never going to let it go through. And a lot of them were fighting and fighting back. And all of a sudden they got steamrolled, and it's like, oh no, like, what do we do to help? So their mind completely shifted. And I saw that in the high school space. I think it was July of 2021. There was one state, California, because of childhood actors and those types of things. There was a different model. Fast forward to October 2022, you now have about 20 to 21 states that allow it. And if you look at the data trend line on how fast it's increasing, they say by 2024, all 50 states will have it. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But the toughest part is oftentimes what we do is we say, no, it's not going to be here. No, it's not going to be here. But in actuality, there are pieces that we still have to support our student athletes with, whether it's there or not, because many of them may be going to that next level, and they need to prepare. What I think the toughest part for high school ADs is, I think when you lead with NIL first, you miss, right? But at the high school level, when you lead with the life skills that NIL needs kids to understand, you build those in. And then when NIL is processed and it moves forward, you're already prepared and you have a plan moving forward. It's very different than the college level. And I know people will fight me on that, but at the end of the day, it is a different ball game than college NIL. At base root, are some of the complexes the same? Yes, but you're now dealing with minors. You're dealing with schools that can't do anything other than educate. There's so many pieces to it at the high school level that are very different, and that's the only space I want to focus in. So NIL is a complex, fast-moving target that I think a lot of people just get overwhelmed. They're like, I don't want to deal with it, and that's okay. But you're going to have to deal with parts of it.
Yeah, well put. And I love how you differentiate between the high school NIL experience for kids, coaches, parents, et cetera, and college, because it is a completely different ballgame. For our listeners, our guest today is Dr. Scott Grant. He's a certified athletic administrator, college professor, and he is the founder and CEO of Triple Threat Leadership. We're going to find out a little bit more about that, but let's take our first break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Snap Mobile for their support. Go to OnSnap, that's onsnap.com, and check out their entire suite of platforms that'll help you as an athletic director do your job. Snap Raise is their fundraising platform, and our coaches have used it with great success. There's even an option where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. Snap Spend is their secure money management platform. Snap Store allows you to order custom spirit gear and fan gear. Snap Connect is their multilingual family engagement program. And Snap Manage will help you design and set up an entire website. Go to OnSnap, that's onsnap.com, for more information. OnSnap.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com and they're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. They'll show you how to scan the attendees that come to your games and collect your revenue. And every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager that's providing hands on support. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll also show you how to sell tickets for things like school dances, your school plays and concerts, even graduation. That's hometownticketing.com. Simple and easy online ticketing. Welcome back, everyone, to the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest is Dr. Scott Grant, the founder and CEO of Triple Threat Leadership. Scott, again, you and I have known each other for a couple of years, but I'm going to guess there might be a couple of our listeners who are not familiar with Triple Threat and all the things that it can provide for a school and athletic department. So right now you're talking to that cynical athletic director in Nebraska or New York or even Florida. Okay. Why should they care about Triple Threat?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, Triple Threat Leadership builds programs to do what I call the triple threat position, right? Add value, build relationships, create opportunities. When I started Triple Threat, I saw a massive need for positive social media, personal brand education. And I was doing that at the college level. My experiences that I've had. So I go into schools, they bring me in, and the greatest part about it is I work usually with all of their student athletes, a lot of times their entire school. And I present to them on social media in a way of not, hey, don't do this, you're going to get in trouble, but rather let's think about how we build a brand and how we're going to activate that online. There's tons of activities that I do with the students. Like today I was at a school, gave a presentation, had 3 deep dives, how this impacts recruiting. I talked to my experience of, like, part of my job was I did analysis of student athletes social media, right? And I peel back the curtain, I show them profiles, we dig in, and we really start to identify how can we use this tool for a benefit. And it's not just athletically related. So as an AD, anytime I would go to the principal and say, hey, I want to bring this guy in, it was usually, well, how's this going to benefit the rest of the school district? And if it wasn't, then it'd be like, I'm not paying for that, right? Or we're not going to do that. The reason Triple Threat started is because the benefit is for everyone involved. Athletics just is a key piece to that player, right? So there are a lot of pieces from that perspective that I go into schools and I work with. Some schools want to do some coaches, some leadership development training, and it looks a lot of different ways. I've also built an online course called The Branding of Me that takes my presentations and provides an activity-based course that they can implement directly into their curriculum, or with a coach's council, or with a captain's council. And kids watch this 2 to 3 minute video and they do an activity, and everything stacks. And at the end of the day, they build a framework for social media, for branding, that they can put into place that literally can revolutionize and change the trajectory of what they're doing and what doors they want to open moving forward. And that's really where the passion in the heart of Triple Threat is going into K-12, because the need is so great. And I love the opportunity to work with any school district that is interested in positive social media and branding education.
Go ahead, if you can. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but you've spoken to tons of schools, a lot of
Yep.
athletic departments. Give an example of, where, there was a need and you came in and really, the kids, the coach, whatever it was, really responded. Just a true success story that you're very proud of.
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, I feel like anytime I get contacted, it's usually because, oh, we're having an issue with social media and we want to provide them with some education. And that's a very reactive approach, and ultimately I will help in any way, shape, or form. But a lot of schools now are contacting, say, Scott, like, we have this career development class. So I worked with this career development class, and it was student athletes and non-student athletes. And we went through all of these pieces. We did a full presentation. We did deep dives at lunch. They integrated the curriculum, and then they actually tied a senior project to. They had to present their personal brand to community members that were coming in, and how they were activating that with all the different groups that they engage with every single day. And there was a student athlete that came up afterwards and said, Scott, like, I'm pretty sure I never would have gotten a scholarship if I wouldn't have understood the way in which I wanted to present myself and how I was doing that every single day in person and online. And, like, kids can do this, right? But a lot of times they don't have the support And someone has to come in and be from a positive perspective on, okay, man, like, let's think about how we can use this as a tool and really dive in further. And I'll show you how people are looking at it and consuming it. And let's take this to another level. Because the one thing I've found, it's not hard. They know this. They want it. But really, no one's really laid out the structure on how to do it for them. And man, it is like light bulbs, and I love it every single time. Every single time.
Yeah, when the kids come up to you and tell you, hey, coach, or in your case, hey, Dr. Grant, thank you. That's huge. That makes it all worth it. Okay. For our listeners, our guest today is Dr. Scott Grant. He's a certified athletic administrator, the CEO of Triple Threat Leadership, and he's going to be presenting this year at the NADC. We're going to talk about that before we go. So let's take another quick break, give a shout out to our sponsors. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com and see how coaches and athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school's social media channels. You can do it in seconds on any device, and you don't need any design experience. Go to Gipper.com and tell them you heard about it on the podcast. Use our code ADPOD10 and get 10% off. That's Gipper.com. Start creating custom branded content for your school's social media channel. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to Huddle.com. Huddle is how the world sees sports, and you can see how over 200,000 teams use Huddle to help their athletes play better. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the smart cameras, the mobile apps. Of course, they love the analytics, but there's so much more. Go to Huddle.com and you're going to find tools that can help your teams, your coaches, your athletes perform better. And it's a complete professional grade solution for the challenges that you and your teams face. Go to Huddle.com and see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back to the Educational AD Podcast. Scott, again, NIL's been around at the high school level now for a couple of years. I think when you mentioned when it first kind of hit, there was only one state that actually had a NIL policy for their state association. I'm guessing the numbers are probably closing in on maybe 50% of states have something on the books. But for those states that don't, or for listeners who aren't quite familiar with exactly what NIL stands for, and I know I was just talking to an AD who didn't know what NIL stood for the other day. Give us a little bit of a primer on what NIL is and maybe where it's at right now at the high school level.
Yeah, absolutely. So NIL stands for name, image, and likeness, and a person has a what's called as a right of publicity, right? The name, image, and the likeness is a legal concept of those three elements, right? And that's where some of the argument comes in. How can someone tell me that I can't monetize my name, et cetera, et cetera? So every school, NIL is based on amateurism policies, right? So what classifies an amateur and what classifies someone who can get paid for the athletic participation, et cetera. So NIL is currently at about 21 states, and it's moving rapidly, right? Most state associations are taking into account, they're looking at their amateurism rules and whether they have an NIL policy. Some states are passing it. There was one state that recently rewrote their bylaws, and their AD association didn't even know that they passed it, right? So there's so many ways in which this is occurring. Some states, it has to be voted on by their school members, like in Ohio. They're the first state to put it up for a vote, which is voted on by their high school principals, and it actually got voted down. They weren't ready for it, right? So it's interesting that there's so many different unique elements to NIL, and it's really hard for ADs because you're drinking from a fire hose, but it's very specific to your own state, right? And what I try to do is I try to empower ADs to understand really what NIL means, but more so gain a little background on, hey, here are some ways that kids are monetizing it. Here are some positives around it. Here are some things that you need to be asking your state association to engage a little bit further, because one of the things that I've found is that oftentimes ADs, they don't have time to go through the policies or the bylaws, and then they're going to be the ones that are required to say, hey, is this kid eligible or isn't he eligible? In Ohio, you were going to have to go through every kid's NIL deal and tell them whether or not it violates the amateurism rules. Well, there's not a single AD that has time to do that, let alone interpret that. They're not lawyers, right? So part of my goal is to really help them feel equipped and empowered of understanding a little bit further of what this looks like nationally. So, at the national conference coming up, NIL is continuing to move, and even in 3 weeks, who knows? There'll probably be more states that allow it. And really, the goal is to help them start to peel back that curtain a little bit and apply it specifically to leadership and how they're leading in what I call this new normal of name, image, and likeness for high school student athletes.
Yeah, again, we talked about the ever-changing landscape. I know in Florida, there was the initial response from the state association, et cetera, was, absolutely, there you can't do it. There's nothing you can do. And then that policy was rewritten to, let them know that, okay, you can do it, but you can't use the high school's name, the high school's logo, your school colors, your uniform, et cetera. So, your name, yes, but your name as a, use my school, McClay Marauder. No, you can't do that. So,
right. Yep. And there's a lot of red flags, and there's a lot of rules, there's some simple ones. A kid can't be paid for athletic performance. So, right. So a kid can't sign a deal that says, hey, if you score this many touchdowns, I'll give you this many milkshakes.
right.
If it's like, and a lot of people don't know some of those immediate, like quick hits, just regulations right on top. And then their state may have specific ones that are key that they need to understand. And sometimes it's understanding how to read the policy. Sometimes it's asking their state to, hey, clarify, what does this mean and what does that look like? And then at the end of the day, schools need to have some sort of policy, because if a kid is violating it, or it almost turns into something that goes into their code of conduct, right? If they're required to submit their NIL deal to the AD, well, what happens if a kid doesn't? I mean, so what, right? If you don't have a policy or a regulation around it, I wouldn't do it, right? Most ADs are going to say, hey, get out of my office. I don't want to deal with this, right? And I've even seen state associations, and I asked one state association, I said, so who's reporting? Like, if a kid gets caught doing something that doesn't or violates the NIL bylaw, he's like, well, the school would need to self-report. And I'm like, okay, well, then you need to equip your ADs with, do they have a document that they're tracking? What do they need to track? And that's where ADs get super overwhelmed, because that's a lot. Like, that is a lot to manage when you're struggling on the front end of even, I don't know if I believe in this or not, right? So there's so many layers to this. And my goal is to really help bring a little ease to ADs, but also support them with, here's some what I call need to knows, right? NIL, NTKs, that every AD needs to understand in leading in this new normal of NIL. And that's ultimately my goal at the national conference, and really helping, understand this a little bit further.
Yeah, the self-reporting, that's another episode in itself. I can tell you who will report, potential violations is it's that school's
Opposing
rival
team.
fans.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
100%.
they're
And
going
we
to be
ask
on the
those
phone to the
questions.
state association right
Yes.
away. Do you know what that school's doing?
Yes.
All right.
And then, but the fear is, do you know how many violations there have been in the NCAA thus far?
For
Zero.
NIL related?
Yeah. Zero.
Because
So,
nobody
like,
knows the rules.
correct. So then it's like, if you don't enforce the rules, you technically don't really have rules, right? So, like, now you're at the high school level, they're putting these new policies and regulations in place, and it's almost like, all right, who's going to be the first kid to get nailed? And there's no student, there's nobody that wants to nail a high school kid on NIL regulations, right? No state association wants to sue or go after one of their own kids for that. But at the end of the day, at some point that is going to happen, and we have to equip our ADs and our student athletes and stakeholders. High schools have so many stakeholders, right? Business entities in town, parents, kids, coaches, ADs, all of them need initial education as well as ongoing professional development to understand and support their student athletes in this process. That's a lot. So there's so many pieces that really need to be part of a strategic NIL plan for every school district, whether you have it or not. And I always tell this example. So I've been working with a school in Ohio. Ohio doesn't even have it. And I've done 2 full day sessions with them. I've done supportive work. We've built curriculum within their structure that they're going to put in place. Like, they're ready to go when this passes to fully support their kids and their staff in a positive way, not to help their kids get deals, but everybody in their school to build skills that if a kid walks down NIL, they're ready to go. And it's amazing. Like, it's better than what I've seen at most colleges because they truly are at the heart of helping all of their kids and stakeholders internally.
Well, on that train of thought, since our podcast listeners can't see your backdrop, if an AD wants to find out more information about NIL, wants to pick your brain, or as you should, schedule a session with Triple Threat Leadership for NIL, how do they get in touch with you, Scott?
Yeah, so you can email me at scott@triplethreatleadership.com. You can also go to the website, www.triplethreatleadership.com, as well as nil-education.com. It'll all funnel to me. You can call me. I'll give you my cell phone number, 419-306-3002. Give me a ring. I'm more than willing to help, because what I don't ever want to happen is that people don't feel supported with people who've sat in their shoes. And I know what it's like to be an AD, and I can't imagine that feeling right now with all of this coming at their heads. So I will do whatever I can to support them in that process.
Okay. And Scott is actually going to give us a little teaser of his presentation that he's going to be making at the NADC conference coming up in a couple of weeks in Nashville. So please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to Final Forms for their support of the podcast. Final Forms is the industry leader in forms and registration, but there's so much more than that. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with things like mobile accessibility. They've got reminders for parents about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can also help your coaches with things like attendance and communication. And for you as an athletic director, Final Forms can help you with eligibility, with rosters, and all the reports that come across your desk. You know, it's time that you walked with a team that's been in your shoes. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake to get started with Final Forms. We also want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school's record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles and their library of templates that are going to help you recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. You can also email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com and let them help you showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. And we want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and check out their indoor scoring tables and video boards. You've heard me say that we've got a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it's just fantastic. We use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com to see exactly what their fantastic products can do for you. That's sidelineinteractive.com. Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. Our guest is Dr. Scott Grant from Triple Threat Leadership. He's also a certified athletic administrator. And Scott, you're going to be presenting this year at the NIAAA conference, the NADC conference in Nashville, which is only a couple weeks away. Can you give us a little bit of a teaser of what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing about NIL is that it continues to shift, right? And part of what ADs need to understand is there are certain things that they need to know immediately. But my focus in the hot topic session is really about, okay, what do we do now? Right? What are our next steps? How do we really start to build a plan? And not just, hey, here's what NIL is, but okay, here's where we need to go from here, right? Whether we have NIL in our state or whether we don't, we all know that the waterfall is coming fast and furious. My goal is to really try to help in that session, get ADs to walk away with, here are some next steps that we need to start integrating and preparing for and planning for, whether it's we're in a state that already has it, we need to get this going quick, or all right, I got a little bit of time. Here's my checklist of boom, 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 boom. And that's really where the goal with the hot button topic session is. It is such a big deal. And there's going to be a legal update the first day. So I'm hoping people will come, because when they walk away, I really do feel like they'll have a strategic kind of idea, plan. Here's where we're going to go, and here's where we start.
Yeah, I don't think we can emphasize enough the ever-changing landscape of NIL, and for those hot topic presentations, I think they're going to be on Tuesday, correct? What time is
Yep.
yours going to be?
Yeah, Tuesday morning it's at 9:30. So there's a workshop from 8:15 to 9:15, and then hopefully everybody will funnel over in. There's just one hot button topic at 9:30. Just me, just NIL. So hopefully people will head on over there and really get some value out of that, and I'll support in any way possible through that.
No, absolutely. And listeners, I encourage you to do that. I know you got a lot of choices. This would be a great one. And your chance to talk to, like I said, one of the nationally leading authorities on all things NIL. And also find out a little bit more about triple threat leadership. Maybe have Scott come to your school or your school district and talk to your coaches, your teachers, your kids, and your parents. Scott, this has been really cool connecting. Looking forward to seeing you in Nashville. But we're
Absolutely.
not done yet. Okay. As you know, we always like to end with the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you have already been on a guest, and I went back and took a peek at your original toolbox suggestions. We're going to see if you repeat those, or if you come up
Man.
with some new ones. That's okay. No pressure. But let's take our final break. We're going to hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor the toolbox segment. And when we come back, we're going to find out what Dr. Scott Grant is going to put into his new athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the athletic director toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic program. At my schools, we use surveys for just about everything, for teachers, for coaches, for kids, and for parents. And the information that came back was almost always positive, and it'll be the same for you. But the surveys also allowed that squeaky wheel parent to vent a little bit. And sometimes they'd share a minor issue that you could address and keep it from turning into a big issue because you didn't know about it because you hadn't done a survey. Go to athleticsurveys.com or email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the folks at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We've been visiting, as I mentioned, with an old friend, Dr. Scott Grant, a certified athletic administrator and the CEO of Triple Threat Leadership and NIL Guru. Scott, you certainly know your way around the world of athletics, but right now I'm going to challenge you one more time to send out a new AD on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. What 3 items are going to go in Dr. Scott Grant's athletic director toolbox, part 2?
All right. All right. All right. So number 1, spare keys to everything, including the baskets. So I'm coaching high school basketball this year, and we went to put down the baskets for a youth camp, and the key is not found, right? Well, there's only one of those keys. And if that key is lost, that's a whole disaster. So do an assessment of your keys and make sure that you have a copy put somewhere and a copy also with the high school principal. That just alleviates tons and tons of issues. Second thing, I would encourage you to double check all of the locks to your storage rooms. So when I first became an AD, in the high school athletic locker room, the storage room closed and the door was locked, but you could just shove it open with your shoulder. Well, we constantly had balls come up missing and helmets, like whatever. It's like, where is our stuff going? Well, I didn't know that people can do that, right? So the initial inventory of being a new AD is also not only counting how many equipment pieces you have, but also ensuring that your door locks actually lock and who has access to those. We did some key coded doors, some things like that that you can start to kind of analyze. The third thing, and I always go back to Google and other, I love project management software because I'm a very big list guy, right? So I used a program called Monday during COVID, and I could assign it to different coaches. So I would make a list and I could assign it to people. We could have due dates, things like that. And it was very simple for some of our coaches who struggled with project management or lists, but everybody was on the same page, right? It gave a little bit of that accountability. So I would find yourself a project management software, whether that's Google Sheets or whatever that might be. You need to have something that you can access from anywhere that makes it clear for everybody on the same page. And then, I think I always got to throw that fourth one in of triple threat leadership. Of course, you need to add that in the toolbox because I'm hoping that I can add some serious value to your athletic departments. So new returning AD, that one's got to be in the toolbox.
I love the keys. We've done well over 300 interviews, and you're the second person to mention keys. But it's so true. Okay, it is so true. I can't imagine there's a single AD listening right now that hasn't had that experience of going to that door, whatever it is, and you don't have the key to it. Okay?
Key to the baskets. That's always the big one too. Like you can't get the basket down, you can't find the key, but you got a game coming. Like, come on. So
no, you're right. Volleyball game, you got to get the baskets up. Basketball game, you got to get them down. Scott, always a treat to spend some time with you again. Looking forward to seeing you in Nashville. For our listeners, if one of them wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit, find out more about NIL and Triple Threat, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Yep. You can head over to the website, www.triplethreatleadership.com. Email me. There's an email link. It'll go right to me. I would love to work with anybody and help you in any way I possibly can. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it, my man.
Oh, no, absolutely. Thanks for making time to share with our listeners. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of these interviews. They all get uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back just about every day for new content on the Educational AD Podcast, and we look forward to seeing you in Nashville. Everybody have a great day. Again, before we go, we want to thank all of our sponsors. We also want to thank our partners, We Coach, and the global community of women in high school sports. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast, and truly look forward to seeing you in Nashville. Take care.